Perfect. So, okay, I guess without any further ado, we will sort of just kick on, and I will add people in as they join. So, I know there's probably a few of you, quite a lot of you within this call that know of us already. Obviously, we have started our pre-order campaign. We are on Kickstarter. We've been sending out a large number of emails and obviously quite a bit of information on social media around sort of who we are, how the system works, and sort of the benefits that you can start to reap through using the data that is collected through the Body Rocket system. But just for some of you that may potentially not know too much about us, just want to give quite a high level overview before we sort of jump into the conversation with Sam, just to touch upon maybe a few different elements of the system that if you don't sort of know about the system, maybe you might not be able to follow the conversation as well. So yeah, with regards to the Body Rocket system, it is an aero measurement tool that provides cyclists with real-time data on both horizontal and vertical drag during rides. The system is designed with easy to install sensors that attach to your bike. These sensors include aero sensors under the seat post and under the TT bars, also on either pedal, as well as a power meter and an airspeed sensor, of which allows you to continue your normal training while collecting precise aero data. So with this data, of which includes both horizontal and vertical drag forces whilst you ride, you're able to see this in real time through a Garmin head unit on the bike to allow you to make adjustments to your position whilst you're out training or competing. But also you are able to see this data in instant feedback through the Body Rocket dashboard. And also you're able to interpret that data through the use of Brian, which is an AI-powered expert that we've onboarded and brought in to assist people with creating training protocols, but also helping to interpret the data. So just a really high level overview. We have got a recorded session that we can share as well in the chat and post via email if people want to just understand a little bit more around the system after the call with Sam. But I guess sort of just jumping straight in then, Sam. Firstly, thank you for joining us. You've had a very inspiring journey, evolving from a dedicated cyclist to a sought-after coach and bike fit specialist. To start, I guess, could you tell us a bit more about how this passion for cycling began and what kept you motivated to race competitively?
Sure. So I grew up in France and started mountain biking over there. Started competing when I was about 14 and doing the kind of cross-country national circuit. But when I moved to Berkshire, which is where I am now, there's not so much mountain biking, but there's a really strong time trialing and triathlon scene. So that's when I got into that. Had my first bike fit, and I might be a bit biased, but I was blown away by how much difference you can feel just from a few little tweaks that seem quite insignificant at first. So I kind of went down that rabbit hole, went on a bike fitting course, read up about it, read all the kind of research papers that I could get my hands on, loved that side of things. And I think triathlon has stuck with me because it's a really scientific sport that you can build your fitness, but you can also be a bit more, just looking to the kind of aero side of things. And there's so many different ways that you can get faster. You can push more watts, or you can save drag. So I think it's that kind of cerebral thing that I really love about the sport.
Yeah, it certainly is an innovative sport that is grabbing all data types at the forefront. I guess what inspired you to transition into coaching and bike fitting, and how has your own experience as an athlete shaped the way you work with others whilst you've been in this role?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, as I say, started off with bike fitting, and I think I'd like to see it as like a holistic process. As I was saying, you can reduce rider drag, which you could do in bike fitting, and make people more slippery, but you can push more watts. And if you're a coach, you might just be focusing on the engine, but I'm just interested in making people faster. So it's combining those two things that that I find fascinating, and that I think kind of Body Rocket can help me with, and help other coaches hopefully.
Sam,
Thank you for sharing
if I
that
can just
information.
expand on that. Sorry, someone has asked me to turn my mic up, so I can't find a way to. I'm just going to speak a little bit louder. But Sam, if you want to expand on that, you've actually found your best setup is a bit non-traditional compared to where people are going now. You found yourself sitting quite a bit further back in a position that sort of balances your aerodynamics and power output. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. It's something that I've been told might work, and without testing it, you don't know. So when I went to one of the sessions with you guys, that was something that I really wanted to see. Just try the two extremes, try the kind of Superman position that you see, you know, the Norwegian triathletes adopting, and for me, that the one that settled was an unusual one of moving me backwards on the saddle rather than forward. But I've got every confidence in the data, and it's been backed up in the race results. So yeah, very very happy with it.
Right.
Perfect. Yeah, the Superman position is a very hot topic, right, at this moment in time, especially off the back of the Ironman championships and Gustav and everyone eager to see if he was actually going to adopt that position. But yeah, no, thank you for sharing that insight. It'd be good to sort of dive a bit deeper into your approach as a coach. Obviously, data has been such a powerful tool in recent years, especially around sports performance. How has a data-driven approach influenced your coaching style, and what kind of impact have you seen it make with your athletes?
Well, I'm imagining that there are a lot of coaches on this call, so you kind of know this already. But if you want to coach remotely, you do you obviously need a good relationship with your athlete, but it really helps to have things like heart rate monitors and power meters, and without that, it might make things a little bit trickier. You know, Training Peaks kind of brings that all together, and you can analyze the metrics and set zones, and if something goes right, you can kind of dig into the data and see what's gone right, and if something goes wrong, maybe you can find that in the in the data too. So yeah, I'm not really sure how easy it would be to not have all the kind of power meters and heart rate monitors and things like that we have these days. I'm quite an early adopter, so when the Stride running power meter came out, I tried that out, and it was mainly because I wanted to have a better understanding of pacing uphill. So I do a lot of hill running, and for me that was a game changer. And so I kind of jumped in with 2 feet, and it really paid off.
Perfect. And I mean, I guess obviously with Power Meter, some of the more remote digital platforms, Training Peaks, Strava, for example, it almost seems like a world where, I mean, I know I certainly couldn't train without having those at my disposal. But I guess and obviously half the reason for the web, for the call, and obviously the creation of Body Rocket is obviously, you know, aerodynamics and drag data, and how we've seen through working with athletes and coaches currently, the sort of role that's sort of starting to play from cycling performance. I guess it'd be good to find out a little bit, obviously, with yourself being an early adopter of some of these other innovative data technologies, how you sort of first came across Body Rocket and what caught your attention about us and the way we collect data.
Sure. Yeah. So as with most triathletes, you'll want to go as fast as possible for as little effort as possible. So I was interested in any way of measuring and monitoring what setups might be fast for me. So I tried the kind of Chung method. If anybody's familiar with that, it's like a virtual elevation model where you just need a power meter and a speed sensor and a 1 kilometer stretch of road. And that's really basic, and you have to do a lot of heavy lifting to make that work. And I've tried AeroTune, which is another way of kind of backwards calculating your kind of CDA, and my windsock, just these kind of these other systems out there, but never really felt too confident in the results, if I'm honest. and it takes a while. It's quite time intensive to learn how to test, and then just interpreting that data afterwards.
That's really insightful. Thank you for sharing. It'd be great to sort of switch gears and talk a little bit about obviously your first hands-on approach. I know you've used the system a few times yourself, and then obviously with some athletes, but it'd be great to find out your first experience with the Body Rocket system, of which was at the Newport Velodrome. Curious to hear what your expectations were going into the session. Had you used sort of another aero testing system before, and sort of what do you anticipate, and did the experience match that?
Yeah, so as I said, I kind of used the Chung method and AeroTune and stuff like that. And if I'm honest, I was a little bit disappointed by, I just didn't feel like I could trust the data all that much. And so then you start looking to other sensors out there that, I mean, there's a few that I could name. But from what I could read, didn't really improve on the experience. You still had to be really, really regimented with your the way you test. And so I guess my first reaction when I kind of learned to body rocket was how solid it seemed. And certainly when I used it at Newport Velodrome, you finish a run and you get the results so quickly that you can see on the dashboard, and then you can try something else within minutes, and you don't have that whole that time waiting and processing the data.
I know you mentioned obviously your positional change and obviously wanting to, I guess, jump in, try the Superman. From that testing session, was it sort of solely you focused on looking at protocols and experimenting, changing around positioning, or were you sort of also going in with the idea of, okay, let me test apparel, bottle placements? What were you looking to achieve from it? Or was it just, going in, testing that Superman position?
Yeah, I was lucky enough that I had some of you guys on hand, so some great minds who kind of knew a little bit more than I did, and suggested that I look at the positional stuff before I look at the equipment, because the impact of or rather equipment that tests well in a certain position might not test so well in a different position. So if you get your position sorted, then you can look at the equipment. So for me, I just really wanted to make these big changes. I'm hypermobile, so I could try some pretty crazy stuff, saddle all the way back, saddle all the way forward, handlebars all the way back, all the way forward, and got pretty wild with all that. And then once I'd kind of settled on the position that was the quickest, then I moved on to equipment.
Great. It'd be interesting, one, for me to actually find out, because I don't think I know this, but also for everyone on the call, I guess, what were your takeaways, or was there any sort of surprising insights did you learn from that sort of one-off session? Did those insights shape your approach to working with aero data for yourself, but also for some of the athletes that you work with as well?
Good question. I certainly think it's unpredictable. That if you're not testing, excuse me, we've got fireworks here. Without actually testing, it's actually impossible to know if something might look fast and actually turn out to be slow, and vice versa. So those were my takeaways, that had I not had the data, it's not something you can really feel. And especially someone hypermobile, I can kind of squeeze myself into different positions and they'll feel as comfortable as each other. So it's helpful to have something really qualitative and go, this is the quickest for you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for sharing your initial experience from the velodrome session. I'd love to hear a bit about how you sort of applied that learning, the technology, your sort of data-driven coaching approach when you worked with Tyler Hughes. So just to add a bit of context, Tyler is an athlete from Canada. He flew over to the UK, came down to the Reading Velodrome during the summer, and was in preparation for a 24-hour World Time Trial Championship that was taking place this month in the US. So he came over for a week and was with us at the velodrome, and so was Sam, sort of there aiding and assisting him with optimizing his aerodynamics for the week. So obviously for an endurance event like the 24-hour time trial, optimizing aerodynamics is pretty essential for a magnitude of different reasons. Could you walk us through the training protocols and testing you set up with Tyler at the velodrome to prepare him for the challenge?
Yeah, sure. So we started off with the positional stuff again. And what we found is that in general, Tyler was quite solid in terms of his position. You could change things, and his drag wouldn't be significantly different from run to run. So you'd think, oh, how are we going to find some gains? But because he's doing a 24-hour event, you can then focus on other aspects like comfort and power generation. And so what we ended up doing was trying to make him more comfortable, testing, is it even if it's neutral, but he's more comfortable, that's a win, right? Because you've just made someone more comfortable over 24 hours for no loss in aerodynamics. So that's the kind of approach we took. And from my experience, it seems like, yeah, some riders vary quite wildly between runs and others don't so much. And he was one of the latter.
Yeah, I remember him coming in to the session going that he was slightly concerned over that 24 hours from a comfort standpoint. Obviously, he knew he had the power output, was an absolute machine on the bike, but obviously the positioning was one thing that he really wanted to dial in. Obviously, with the system, with the sensor being under the saddle, you have the ability to actually see how a rider potentially moves around on the saddle. How beneficial was that for you? Obviously, in between him going out and doing laps, to actually be able to see that data and sort of go, okay, from an aerodynamic standpoint, it's pretty consistent, but actually being able to see that saddle data, how beneficial was that for you to actually start to continue to tweak out the best position for him across the span of the week?
Yeah, that was really helpful because he shuffled a little bit. He knew he shuffled on the saddle, and so it was just looking run by run. Is he shuffling less on these runs, and if so, yeah, going back to my point earlier, if he's neutral, if he's not getting any less aero, but he's shuffling less, that's a win. So that was a huge area of focus for sure.
Great. I guess throughout the preparation with Tyler, obviously touched upon position being one, but obviously you were able to work with him for more than just a single session. How were you able to use the continuous data and the testing sessions to make additional adjustments? Was it solely just the position, or were you looking at different apparel, helmets, jerseys, bottle placements, for example?
Yeah, so out of those, the bottle placements made the biggest difference. Specifically, the bottle down the top, and we tried quite a high bottle behind the aero bars, like a high pedestal BTA setup, and those, yeah, that made the kind of biggest gains. He was quite set on some of his equipment, so for comfort reasons, and I appreciate that, because it's common to see big gains with things like skin suits, but if it's fast but not comfortable, then that's going to be a problem over a longer event. So there was some leeway in some aspects, and in other aspects he was just quite set on, this is the equipment I'm going to use and this is what I feel comfortable in. So we kind of had to respect that as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And would you say then, obviously from a positional standpoint, that was one of the biggest gains that he walked away from, obviously just having that confidence and understanding from the data that, he is in his most comfortable position to adopt for the entirety of that ride? Or there are a few things that maybe sprung out that maybe were moving away from positional changes that were also gains as well for him?
Yeah, so I think he came away from it just with a lot of satisfaction that it may look like we've made him more upright or just focused on comfort, but knowing that it didn't cost him anything in terms of speed was probably good for his morale, knowing that he wasn't just sitting up in the wind and losing time. And something else that I haven't touched on yet is it really highlighted the importance of an adjustable bike. because the body rocket system in itself has got a lot of adjustability built into it in terms of the front end. But his aero bar setup wasn't optimal, and that was limiting him. So just to kind of highlight that point, it's really important to get something adjustable, because it could be the smartest thing in the world, but if it's stuck in one position, you might not be getting the most out of your body position.
Thank you for taking us through that journey with Tyler across the span of the week. It's amazing to see how a data-driven approach and attention to his aerodynamics can make a powerful difference to him, even not just in terms of saving watts, but also from a comfort standpoint, especially with an event that he's doing. I'm hoping everyone in the chat has gained some valuable insights into how potentially you could look to use this yourself, or from a strategic coaching standpoint, to aid your own performance, or also those that you're working with, be it clients or athletes. So myself, Eric, and Sam are here for the next 25-30 minutes to answer any questions that you might have as well. I can appreciate that there's probably quite a lot of questions for Sam around how he's used it and how he potentially will look to use it with athletes going forward. But if there's any more general questions around the system and how it can potentially be used, or the technology, the floor is yours. So we will try and answer any questions in the chat, but happy to open it also to the floor as well to ask any questions, be it via voice as well.
I've been monitoring the questions, so we do have one to start with. So I'll kick off with that. Phil asks, can you give us a clue how long it took to set up your bike with Body Rocket? And I can probably Stefan answer some of that as well. So the system that Sam started working with was on one of our test bikes. We were fortunate enough that he rides a bike that we already had in our stable, and so we were able to get him on that bike to begin with. The beta testers that are now using the system are using it on their own bikes, and generally it's taking about 45 minutes to an hour to set up the bike, but it is still a beta test system. We're quite confident we can get that down into sort of the half an hour range. You're putting a set of pedals on the bike, and you are pulling the saddle off the bike, putting the sensor in between the seat post and the saddle, and then you're pulling the risers off of the bike and putting our adapter and sensor in to replace the risers. So those are the bits of the system. It's not technically complicated. It's just a matter of taking the existing parts off the bike and putting them in, putting the new ones in. And it's kind of dependent on which bike you're working with as to how long that takes. But I think that should be around half an hour or so.
I did also get one question sort of come through privately, which was, Sam, would you be able to provide examples of how you've used the data and the insights, and how that might have potentially changed your approach to race preparation?
To race preparation. So to answer the first question, I mean, I was so confident in the data that I actually got a part machine for my bike. So literally, I provided some drawings, got a part, sketched up and CNC machines, to allow my saddle to go back much further than the bike can normally handle. So that's something that I thought was worth it for the watt savings. So I had that much confidence that I went ahead and got that made, because it really made a difference.
Great,
okay.
thank you.
Got a question from David around power meters. Can we use existing power meter on the bike, or is it mandatory to use Body Rockets? It says that we can use both. That's really almost that they use both is really sort of has been geared to communications we've had with or work we've been doing with professional athletes that are obligated to continue using a particular power meter. The Body Rocket system does require that you use the Body Rocket pedals. We are measuring drag force at each one of our sensors, and so those sensors are quite precise. It takes about 10 times the precision to measure aerodynamics as it does to measure power. So the power meter pedals that come with the system are accurate to about 0.1%, which is around 10 times as accurate as existing power meter pedals. It's not to say that in the future that might not be possible. It's surprising how little we've had to do to a power meter to the difference between our power meter pedals and say a set of Asiomas or Garmin's, but it would require that they do a little bit of work and do an upgrade to their system. Matt, is it possible for me to share my screen? Oh, I think
Yes, you should be able to.
cool. Okay. I've just because we've been getting some questions around the power meter. I'm just gonna share this and talk a little bit about it. There we go. Okay. Silverstone Sports Engineering Hub has been using our pedals for about a year with their new pedaling efficiency rig. And that whole rig is designed to look at the power the athlete's putting into the bike and the power that's coming out the other end at the roller. And then to be able to look at differences to determine, what waxing your chain does, or what changing the tire pressure or changing the tire that you're using does, or changing the rolling surface that you're on does to the amount of power that's required. And they built the system and then realized that commercially available power meters were not going to cut it in terms of what they needed for an input power. This plot just exemplifies the differences. So our line, our power in is the squiggly blue line, and then the power out is the pink line as measured by the dynamometer, and then the black line is a very high quality Ant Plus power meter. And you can see a couple of differences. One is that our line tracks the pink line quite well. And that's an absolute requirement for them to be able to get the data they need out of it. You can also see that the squiggles there is actually due to the high data rate that we pull the data off. And so you can be looking at what's going on within a pedal stroke. That is the fluctuations, the variations within a pedal stroke. You don't see that on the pink side because there's a big 2-meter metal wheel that's spinning and absorbing that energy before it comes out. So those fluctuations get taken out before the dynamometer reads it. But that's the difference, and that's just a really good example of how precise our system is comparatively. This is sort of a practical application of that. So in qualifying their rig and getting it ready for commercial use, they went through a series of tests where they changed the tire pressure on a tire and then reran the test. And so each one of these data points is it's like a 30-second test, I believe, where the athlete has just been putting in a target power output, and then they're measuring the differences. And they reran the test 3 times to look for repeatability. So you've got to test it 50, 60, 70, all the way to 130, and then rerun that 3 times. So we got is it 9, 8, 20, 27 tests in total, I think. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so 27 tests in total. And there was a crank-based power meter for the Ant one, and then our pedals. So it was literally simultaneous that they were doing this. You can see the body rocket data in the blue lines is repeating within a watt quite consistently. The Ant Plus data is really struggling to be repeatable, or even in some cases show that change at all. So this is, we're here selling aerodynamics, and that is really the value and the thing we're bringing to the market. But in doing so, we have an absolute top-notch power meter, so you don't have to have any concerns about changing from the power meter that you have to the one that we're offering with the system. Where are we? There's been a few questions.
Sorry, yeah, I was muted there. Question from James. So can you ask Sam how he sees the body rocket system being a part of his work with his clients on an ongoing basis, or is it more of a one-off assessment tool?
I think it could be both. I would love it to be a long-term thing. I would love it if Body Rocket could become something as ubiquitous as a power meter, because you could just monitor how well athletes are sticking to their position throughout a ride. Because it's all very well getting someone in a really error position, but what happens if they have to break into the bullhorns after like 100k of a 180k ride? So yeah, I'd love to use the system on a kind of one-off basis with people if they want to do some testing on some open roads, or or yeah, as an ongoing thing as well. Yeah, I think there's scope for both for sure.
And
Yeah,
that
and I
fits
guess it's
our
something that we
vision.
will. Sorry, going after you, Eric.
I think that fits our vision as well. This is we want this to be like a power meter. That's my background. I worked at PowerTap in the early 2000s and kind of saw the arc of that industry. We want to do the same, and for a lot of the same reasons. Your body position is not static. You're moving all the time on the bike. Things like going on the bullhorns are very extreme examples of that, but just simply changing your position, bringing your head up, and your back position changing. Those things happen over time, and doing a bunch of short-term tests is only going to give you a limited insight into that. So those short-term tests are great. Wind tunnels are still very limited, and most people don't have access to them. So giving them just that and through a test is really valuable, and I think there's certainly room for that. But my hope is that, very much like power meters, once you've had a taste of that, you're going to say, I just need this all the time. Sorry, Matt, go on.
No worries at all. Yeah, you basically covered exactly what I was going to say. There's a question from Colin. I guess it's maybe one for both of you, to be honest. How long of a session does it typically take for an athlete to test and find some value in the testing? I guess obviously, Eric, through your work with a number of the beats testers and the users that we've had along to a number of our days, but then also Sam as well with yourself and with Tyler. Be great to hear both.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy to hand it over to Sam. He's been through basically a stock session. So yeah, you can go ahead and talk about your experience and what sort of the gains that you found in your first session, Sam. That'd be great.
Yeah, so I think in the space of a morning with Tyler, we'd actually rattled through a lot of runs. Yeah, hard to put a figure on it really. But I think that the system's evolving as well. So this was on everything I've done is on a velodrome. But the idea is that we can take this outside soon, and I'd quite like to see some kind of longer tests, as I say, just because there's a little bit of rider fatigue and people moving around a little bit. So yeah, I think it can be as short as how many laps would we typically do, Eric, at a velodrome for
the 250s? It was 10 laps of measurement. Now we had you outside on the Reading Velodrome, which is a bigger outdoor velodrome, and kind of we kind of picked it because it's as close to the real world as possible. It has bumps and a little less in the way of banking in the turns. I believe we were doing 5-lap runs on there still. The stuff that we have been doing more recently, we were in Catesby Tunnel yesterday. We were seeing results in a single kilometer stretch without feeling the need to do a second test on there. So depending on the venue, that is coming down. I think if you're going to be the stuff that we've done outdoors in changing wind conditions, you're still asking a rider to go out for a 5 or 6 minute run to gather enough data to have confidence that it's consistent. If you're in a controlled environment, it's quite a bit shorter now.
And the second part of Colin's question, do you have any recommendations on how much to charge or compensate for the use of the system, I believe? So I guess from how we see this being used and from talking to coaches, there's sort of two avenues that you have. Obviously, you can use it in a single session, in a setup with them for a number of hours to allow them to go out and do laps and test positioning. There's the second option where it could be the case that because of with the coach's dashboard and the analytic platform, it is digital. So it could be the case that you would provide the system to one of your clients or athletes. They would have the system for a number of weeks or a month or multiple months. And every ride or training session or competition, you would be able to access that data and still be able to have a touch point with them. So there's sort of two ways you would be able to potentially look to use it. From a pricing standpoint, can't really provide, I mean, depending on your pricing model or your business model, I guess.
those conversations, but almost really offering to be working with people that are local enough that we can work with them to help support exploring that and understanding what can be charged. I think it's a reasonably small range of what it would cost to get like a bike fit, and so I think you're if you're charging in a similar range, you're sort of compensating your time similarly, and you're certainly below the sort of cost that it would take to go to a wind tunnel, and then of course then renting the equipment out for a period of time. That's sort of a new thing, and I think we're going to have to figure out or let work with coaches to help them figure out what the right pricing model is there. I think it's a premium service. It's new in terms of the time you're spending. It's not a whole lot different than looking at someone's power files. So from your time perspective, it should be reasonably light touch and not too exhausting. But I think because of the novelty of it, it is something that you can be charging a premium for. Looking forward to working with more people and understanding that. Matt, you touched on the dashboards and things. We haven't actually talked through what a coach's package is, I don't believe. This is probably a good time to just talk about what we put together there. This is fairly new. We've just added it to the Kickstarter platform based on the feedback we've had and the desire for coaches to have something that's a little more catered to their needs.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, just to build on what Eric said, this coaches package in essence is sort of from a retail price is £3,500, but we are running an offer for the duration of our pre-order campaign, which is another 14 days, so 2 weeks, which is £3,000. So in essence, what that would comprise of is a single body rocket system. So everything you need from the aero sensors, the power meter, and the airspeed sensor that you can have set up on a single bike. We'd also provide you with 5 bike adapters of your choosing, and then also additional adapters could be purchased as and when you needed them with your clients or your athletes. It would also provide a year's worth of access to the coach's dashboard. So how this would basically differ from a consumer dashboard would very much be the case that you'd have a drop-down menu and you would say you had 5 athletes using the system. You would intermittently be able to change through those athletes on a single dashboard without needing to have multiple dashboards for different athletes, which might become cumbersome. You'd have them all in one place. And then, of course, with it being a relatively new data set and obviously aligning you with our dashboard and some of the data tools within it, we will be running coaches education. So it could be a education video series with the support of Alex Dowsett and his FIS Club that we partnered with. Then also webinars similar to this, where it might be the case that we bring on aero experts or additional coaches to talk through how they've been using it with their athletes as well.
Yeah, there's a couple of aspects there. I think we want to make sure that people using the body rocket system have a great experience. We built a tool that it really opens the access to aerodynamics, but trying to keep in mind that aerodynamics.
Sorry, Eric, your microphone's gone down again, volume-wise.
Okay, I'll just speak more loudly. Is this better?
Slightly.
Slightly. Okay.
Oh, we're back. Okay.
Oh, we're good now.
We're good.
Okay. I've kind of lost track of what we're talking about. Oh, so aerodynamics is, we want people to have a good experience with the product that, consumers as well as the coaches. And we recognize that aerodynamics is, a bit of a tricky thing, or certainly not something that we would expect every coach to be familiar with. We think that it's really valuable to get this out to coaches and particularly to fitters, because you're changing an athlete's position on the bike. And so the two are just intimately tied to each other. And we think it's a lot easier to help coaches and fitters understand aerodynamics than it is to help aerodynamicists understand bike fitting. To that, we have our Body Rocket individualized AI network, which we affectionately call Brian, and it is really there as an aid to help you go through and maximize the value that you're giving your clients as well. So a lot of it's not rocket science, but it's a great tool to help keep you on track. Your clients and possibly yourself are going to be tempted to be distracted by the shiny new things like a new helmet to test. But what Sam said earlier is very true. The big gains come from the changes to your body, and those changes affect how the accessories that you're putting on yourself actually work. And so using Brian to help structure a test session and focus your time with your athlete on getting the biggest gains out is a service that comes with that. So when you have a client come in, you can ask Brian to help you set up a test protocol, and that will evolve. So if you have a client come in 3 or 4 times and there's a history there, then the recommendations will evolve with that and help you keep focused on getting the most out of that client. Now, obviously, you can override that if they come in with 3 helmets and they're hell bent on testing those helmets. You're free to do that. It just is that sort of gentle nudge to bring you back to this is where you're going to get the most gains based on what you've tested and statistically where you're probably going to find the next biggest gains. It's also sort of the second job is to take a look at data afterwards and help you sift through and look for anything that's sort of outliers and helps you or that helps you find things that might be giving you a wrong steer in the data. One of the challenges for anyone, I would imagine a handful of people in this chat have used competitive systems, used the virtual elevation method or some of the other products that are out there, and you'll be aware that one of the biggest problems with aero testing in the field is losing confidence in what you're doing. So if you get one erroneous result that doesn't make any sense, then it calls into question the rest of your day and everything that you're doing. And that's just, it's not a great feeling. You can spend a lot of time sifting through and trying to figure out what's gone wrong. The body rocket system, through its direct force drag measurement, is designed to get rid of a lot of those problems, right? So if you didn't wax your chain in the morning or pump your tires up to the exact same pressure, our system's not affected by that. And so the testing that you're doing the day before and the testing you're doing today is going to remain consistent because it's not susceptible to a lot of those sorts of errors. If you're testing on a different road with a varying surface roughness, it's not going to have an effect there. But there are still things that can go wrong. And so we've got tools that are helping with that as well. Have an example from just recently where we had an athlete come out with 3 different skin suits and test them. And one was a tri-suit, one was a regular skin suit, and one was a brand new skin suit, sort of the latest model of the one that the rider was regularly using anyway. And quite surprisingly, the latest model tested slower than the existing one, and that would be, it's sort of counterintuitive. These companies are genuinely trying to make faster skin suits. It doesn't always work, so it's not out of the question, but it would be a little counterintuitive. And so we had that happen, and instead of shrugging and saying, results are personal, and this one just doesn't seem to work for you, we were able to look into that data with the help of Brian, who can pull out these sort of statistical anomalies. And Brian had flagged in this case that the rider, contrary to the first 2 tests, was squirming around all over the place on the saddle. And they didn't mention that when they came back, but we were able to flag that and say, hey, it looks like there was something drastically different on this ride. And they said, oh yeah, I kept on slipping off the saddle. I think this fabric is really slippery. And in fact, that was, what was going on. They were out for a demo session, so they weren't on their own bike. They were on a different saddle that wasn't quite as sticky as theirs. So potentially a sort of erroneous result, but one that we were able to flag. It just, gives everybody confidence that the data is solid. There are sometimes other explanations for it, but those explanations are really valuable to understand as well.
Just a few additional questions. I know sort of time is, we're almost getting close to the hour mark, so just whittle through the last few. I think we've got enough time. Steve Lorraine asks, if you can't get to a velodrome with your clients, from your company testing, what outdoor terrain has proven to be reliable for body rocket testing?
Well, one for me as well. So there are two other well, there's three other scenarios that you can do outdoors. So if you can find a circuit, a relatively flat circuit, you can go around and do that, or you can do an out and back stretch. That's pretty common. Anybody who's done testing is going to be familiar with it, and that's a great way to go out and do a series of tests. So if this is something where you're offering services to an athlete, that's the kind of test and the kind of venue that you'd be looking for. But you can also train the system on a loop that has rolling terrain, and then that's a nice situation for continuous use. So, for example, as a coach, you yourself are probably hoping to put this on your bike and get quite familiar with it. So if you are riding this circuit on a regular basis, you can start to characterize all of the equipment and clothing that you use and positions that you commonly adopt if you're playing around with things and want to understand how they play out over longer periods of time. And it's also something that you can then send your athletes out to if you've trained a course or courses in your area, you can send them out if you are giving the equipment on loan to them to continue doing that testing in your absence. So those are the options. Our vision is definitely to be able to allow you to ride anywhere without any pre-training, and we believe it's certainly possible. It's just not. It's something, there is some development time there, and it's not something that we want to promise on launch of the product.
Thank you. So yeah, two final questions. Can you just run the power meters without the rest of the system?
At present, no. We are getting a lot of questions on that. I had not anticipated much of a demand for that. I've been around the power meter industry sort of since its inception, and I've not seen anyone successfully sell a better, more accurate power meter in quite a while. And so while we're quite proud of what we've done, we didn't anticipate there being a need for that. You certainly can run the system on your bike all the time, and the power transmits through. But right now the brain of the system sits in the front sensor, and so it talks to the pedals, and it is the part that broadcasts the Ant Plus signal out to your Garmin to be able to read. We're getting a lot of interest in that, and so it's very likely, well, we will be taking a look at technically what's required there. It's very likely that we will introduce an option for the pedals to broadcast that directly, so you can just use the pedals.
Thank you. Just two more. Another one popped up in the chat. How do you interpret the weight changes between saddle, pedals, and front end? What sort of insights does this provide?
Yeah, do you want to jump in at all with that, Sam, or should I take that?
Yeah, I can speak from my experience anyway. I mean, if you've got a lot of weight in one area more than another, could cause some issues. A lot of people tense up when they've got too much weight over the front of the bike. So it's quite a good way to actually qualify as well as quantify how a rider's holding themselves, because through a bike fit, it's something I'll be looking at anyway, but to have the data there just to back it up is great as well. So yeah, there's certainly a lot of stuff that you can dig into, and it's of interest to me.
Yeah, we're certainly looking for people who are interested in digging into this more. We are first and foremost an aerodynamics company, but there's some really valuable data in here that we think is going to be valuable, not just in helping someone understand aerodynamics, but in any aspect of bike fitting, looking at how people are transferring that weight and how they're moving around as they're riding as well. I think the ability to follow a bike fit into the field is as valuable as being able to follow an aero fit into the field and follow people for a few weeks after that's happened. So right now, I guess the things that we look for is if we're doing fits and there is a drastic shift in that weight balance, then we specifically ask the athlete to pay attention to that and consider if that is going to affect their ability to hold a position. Because we have some very good metrics on the pedals, and I don't think I have something I can quickly pull up or do I? I do. Just happen to have a tab open on my screen. So this is actually, oh, sorry, I'm sharing the wrong thing, I think. Where's my Zoom screen? What am I sharing right now?
Power meter pedals.
The same stuff I shared previously?
Yeah, we're looking at the left and right pedals at the moment.
Okay. Okay, I think I got it now. Is that better?
No, it's the same screen.
Is it two dials?
Two dials, right turn.
Yeah. Okay. So this isn't what I was showing before. This is, in fact, this is from our dashboards. This is actually looking at Christian. Many of you will be familiar with Christian and Gustav's drastic changes to their positions. We had a very, very short period of time to work with them between the Olympics and in Kona. And Olaf felt that it was necessary to take some risks and get them into some improve their aerodynamics notably, just to catch up with what the competition had been doing in the 2 years that they had been focused on Olympic things. So one of the things that we were watching very closely to make sure that we weren't doing anything that would be detrimental to their performance there was looking at the peak, the angle of peak power application. And so this is a series of 11 tests. 10 was, I think, where we ended up working with him, what he ended up racing in. So R1 is what he raced Frankfurt in and what he was sort of familiar with. And so here his peak pedal or angle of power was 199 and 346. And we would be looking for anything that moved 2 or 3 degrees from there to say, we think that you've actually started engaging different muscle groups and that this position is going to take a while to adapt to. And so that would have been a red flag for us. This is the position that he ended up racing in. We're still at 199 and 346. And so that is a metric and an example of how we use some of those sub metrics below the aerodynamics to make decisions. I guess while I'm here, if I scroll down a little bit, we are measuring the vertical forces at each sensor as well, and that gives us a measure of hydration. And so when you're going out and doing a bunch of tests, this isn't particularly interesting because the athlete's coming in and taking sips of water and stuff in between the tests. But this is something that's a bit more interesting to follow when you're testing athletes over longer periods of time. And I guess while we're here, this is an example of looking at the weight distributions here. And so you will see, actually, as we brought Christian forward, counterintuitively, more and more weight went onto his saddle, which I think people speculating and on social media were thinking it was really just the opposite, and he was really kind of stressing out his upper body a bit. He was putting more weight on his saddle, and I guess as long as we're talking about these things, I can show a little more of our dashboards. We can look at how much he's pushing or pulling on the aero bars. This is the torque, the moment that he's creating. And again, if we go back and look at where he was a little below 5 newtons of torque on there. And so we could say, yes, this is a little more stressful for him in that sense. He's putting slightly higher moments into the handlebar. We can monitor, if you've used a Gebiumized system, it's a similar feature in the sense that we can monitor where he's sitting on the saddle. And so in this case, he's moving less than 10 millimeters. This is quite normal, quite comfortable. It's a position he's been in for a while. We did note with this, when we took him to the new position, he was going to take some time to get comfortable with this. He hadn't quite found his position yet in that regard. And then this is, I already showed you the weight distribution differences. You can see this in a time series as well. And so you can see here he had sort of 20 kilos going through his handlebar sensor. And then when we move here, that's dropped to more like 15 kilos. This isn't quite as interesting in this one. If you're doing something in a velodrome, then looking at this in terms of laps, you can actually overlook and kind of watch trends over time if things are moving. I guess that might be a little more interesting up here, where his moment is trending over time, although actually, because it's not changing within the lap, this is actually probably a better view there. But that's all. We're kind of coming close to the end of the hour. I guess that was a nice opportunity to share a bit of what our dashboards look like, and what you as a coach would be able to dig into and analyze. And there's quite a bit there, which is why we have Brian to help you kind of dig through that and pull the 3 or 4 interesting things to the top of that, so you don't have to dig through all of it every time.
Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, no, we're pushing very close to the hour mark. Just one final question, and then we'll sign off. Let you enjoy the rest of your evenings. Phil Jones, can you identify and eliminate passing traffic in a run?
Right. It's not something that we're actively doing. We are pushing for this to be something like a power meter that you're using all the time. And so that kind of stuff kind of washes out over time. We would recommend that you when you are choosing and training a loop, that you do find something that's lower traffic. But if you only have option to a high traffic route, as long as it's always high traffic, you should still be getting similar results. So it's not, what you're seeing there is it's not an error. It's real. If it's a tailwind because cars are passing you all the time, that's happening. And I guess where it raises potential errors is if you're using the same loop on a busy day versus a quiet day, then even over a long period of time, that's not going to average out. But that is not something we're actively trying to take out. We're saying that if you're using this for longer periods of time, then it's kind of coming out on its own, or averaging out on its own. I just want to note, James asked a question about that as well. He's asked, what's Kickstarter? So that's probably worth mentioning. So Kickstarter is a platform for new products coming to market to allow for a pre-sale of the system, which is exactly what we're doing right now. And so if you head over to kickstarter.com and search for Body Rocket, then you can find our page there and the different packages that we're offering, including the coaches package that Matt talked about.
Yeah, thank you for expanding on that. But yeah, no, we're at the hour mark now. So thank you for joining us this Thursday evening. Hope you found that insightful and interesting. Obviously, finding out a bit more around the system, how Sam's been using it himself and with athletes, and also how you could potentially look to be using it yourself for personal gains, or also with some of your athletes and clients as well. So this session is recorded, so we will download it and get it over to you via email so you can watch it back again. If there's anything you want to rewatch or you think you might have missed, either tomorrow or first thing on Monday. And then also within that email as well, we will share over a link to the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter page is also built out with everything and anything Body Rocket, so it's quite a good hub for information. But in the meantime, I know there's been a lot of questions here, so I hope that provided some really good insight. But if you do have any questions coming off the back of this call, please do not hesitate to reply to the email with the recorded webinar, and we'll be more than happy to get back to you via email, or if it's a bit more in depth, happy to jump on a call with you as well. So yeah, thank you again for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thank you to Sam for joining.
I was just going to say, if anybody's got,
Sam. You've been a great guest.
If people have got questions relating to like my experience, then I was going to just say, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on social media, Fitted by Sam. So if that's of interest and you haven't got to ask your question today or whatever, just reach out that way. I'm happy to help.
We'll also put his Instagram handle in the email as well, just in case you didn't catch that, but you'll be able to just follow him through the link that I share in the email as well. But again, thank you, Sam, for joining us. You've been a great guest.
Pleasure. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you, everyone.